The iconic Route 66, which travels from California to Illinois, is one of the most famous road trips in the entire world. My dad and I had been talking about driving it forever, so we decided to make that dream a reality in June of 2019. The route is constantly changing, and so I figured that this video series would be helpful for those that want to look back and see what the route looked like during this time period. Also note that I tried my best to get all the correct facts in here, but I may have missed a couple. This video is just a combination of all the state ones, so if you want a shorter video, you can just watch the individual states. Here's how our 2-week journey went on Route 66. To begin our journey, we headed out to the Santa Monica Pier, which has become the official end or start point, even though Route 66 actually ended a few blocks east. For us, it was the starting point of our journey as we were heading east and our end point was Chicago. We photographed the famous sign and then made our way down to the pier. It was a Saturday, so it was incredibly busy and we had to wait for our turn with the end of the trail sign. Starting our journey on Route 66, 2,400 miles from Santa Monica to Chicago. After taking our photo with the sign, we walked all the way out to the end of the pier where there's a tribute to Bob Waldmeyer, one of the famous artists from Route 66. If you're doing this drive, you'll find a lot more things about Bob Waldmeyer all along the 2,000 miles of Route 66, and he's definitely one of the most iconic characters on the journey. From there, it was back up the pier and across the oceanfront walk area of Santa Monica to our next stop. It's just a plaque, but it's dedicated to Will Rogers, and Route 66 is known as the Will Rogers Memorial Highway. Plus, it's closer to where the official endpoint of Route 66 would be. Just left Santa Monica, got some of that great Los Angeles traffic, continuing on to our next stop. This is my dad, by the way. While technically Route 66 does cut through the heart of Hollywood, we decided to avoid that as we wanted to make the most of our day, and you easily need a day or a day and a half to see Hollywood. If you want to explore this area though, there are a lot of great spots on Sunset Boulevard in downtown LA, there's the Griffith Observatory, Union Station. I have a bunch of videos on all these spots on my channel as well. Our first stop on this journey was Elysian Park and the overlook of downtown Los Angeles. This part of Route 66 is on the Arroyo Seco Highway, which is technically one of the first freeways in the West and was built in 1940. From there, we continued to Figueroa Street where we got off to see the Chicken Boy statue. The Chicken Boy statue was made in the 1960s and was based on the famous muffler men that you can see all along the drive. This one was different though because they put a chicken on the head and they turned the arms inward so it could hold the bucket. It was moved to this current location in 2007. Next up, we headed over to Galco's Old World Sodas. While technically not on Route 66, the original location of this store was built in Los Angeles in 1897. It was moved to this current location in 1955 and it has over 700 different sodas that you can purchase. It's a fun store with a lot of nostalgia, especially for the older crowd. After having some fun with our purchases at Galco's, we headed on towards Pasadena with a stop at the Rialto Theater. It's no longer a theater, it's actually a church now, but it's still pretty cool to see from the outside. A few blocks from there was our next stop at the Fair Oaks Pharmacy and Soda Fountain. With over 100 years in business, Fair Oaks Pharmacy is still one of those places where you can get an old-time phosphate soda. The interior looks like something out of the 1950s and it has a great vibe for a Route 66 journey. They have dozens of different flavors and my dad and I both looked over the menu for a while before deciding on what we wanted. Pop's got a Chipotle pineapple phosphate soda.
This is the coolest place. Chipotle pineapple. Yeah, it's got the pineapple and a little burn afterwards. It's actually very nice.
Chipotle?
Yeah.
This is the most popular flavor, cherry lime. We got to meet the owner and we could have stayed in this spot a lot longer because it was a lot of fun. But we headed on, saw another historic sign, and then made our way to Pasadena. Our first stop in Pasadena was the iconic Colorado Street Bridge. This is the famous Colorado Street Bridge. It's a little bit hard to get a good picture of it now because of all the fences that they have, but it's historic from 1913 on Route 66. I always love seeing this old bridge, and the best place to park for it is at the end of Grand Avenue. Just be sure to read the signs so you don't get a ticket. On the way out of town, you can see the old Howard Motor Company building, and across the street in front of the McDonald's you can see a Bancroft marker, which was an early Pasadena milepost for Foothill Boulevard. Our next stop brought us to the town of Monrovia and the Aztec Hotel, which was built in 1924. This is the Aztec Hotel, which is one of the most famous buildings on this stretch of the drive. It's not open right now, but it's still cool to see from the outside. The hotel is currently undergoing renovations and is supposed to open sometime in the future. From there, we visited another old service station before going to one of my dad's favorite places for lunch, the Hat. While the Route 66 location is not the original one, it's still a historic place for lunch as this chain began selling their famous pastrami sandwiches in 1951. That's the pro tip from Pops is you gotta throw some hot peppers in there.
Hot peppers.
Falling apart.
Never disappointed.
Next up, it was on to some more health food at the Donut Man. This is what the Donut Man in Glendora is known for. Their famous peach donut. They only have it like a few weeks out of the year, mostly in July and August, but if you come and they have the peach donut, you have to get it. Fresh peaches and glaze. I don't know how you beat this, it's so freaking good. Of course, if you don't want peach donuts, there's also lots of other options as well. Next, we made it over to Upland and the Madonna of the Trail statue. There's 12 of these along the National Old Trails Road, which goes from California to Maryland, and they're dedicated to the spirit of the pioneer woman. There's only 2 in Route 66, and we'll see the other one when we're in Albuquerque. Continuing on, we made it to the outskirts of Rancho Cucamonga, where they have 2 historic restaurants, the Magic Lamp Inn and the Sycamore Inn right across the street. The Sycamore Inn in particular is historic as it's been here since the mid-1800s, but we passed them both by as we wanted to get to the Rancho Cucamonga service station before it closed. This is the Cucamonga service station. It's one of the best recreated gas stations in the state of California. The Cucamonga service station was built in 1915 and it's undergoing renovations to look like what it would have back then. It even has the old bell that cars would have driven over when they came up to get their gas. This was easily one of the highlights in California as the whole thing was really well done and the people who worked there were really excited to talk to you about Route 66. You should consider checking this spot out even if you're not doing the Route 66 drive. After entering into Rancho Cucamonga, you want to stop at this orange. This is the only one remaining on Route 66 in California, and it's what the farmers used to use to bring out their food and to get people to stop while they were driving the route. There's also a restaurant attached to the orange. We didn't stop to eat here, but it looks like a fun place if you need a bite to eat. From there, we headed on to San Bernardino and our hotel for the night. We made it to our first hotel on the road trip, the Wigwam Motel in San Bernardino. There are 2 Wigwam motels on the route, this one and then the one in Holbrook, Arizona, but this is the only one that we stayed at. So fancy. I don't think you're gonna fit on that rollaway.
I don't think so.
We're gonna rock, paper, scissors for it. Oh! This is what happens when you lose rock, paper, scissors. You get a bed that's at least a foot too short for you. After figuring out our bed arrangements, we took some time to explore the motel and talk with the owner, who was also really passionate about Route 66 as well. It was a great place to spend our first night on the route, and it reminded me a lot of the Cars movie. They have 20 of these teepees here, but if you're coming this summer, be sure to get a reservation in advance as they do sell out. It was just about dinner time, so we decided to head over to the Meatla Cafe, which has been on Route 66 since 1937 and serves some great Mexican food. The story goes that supposedly this place was the inspiration for the Taco Bell taco. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but we grabbed tacos to find out.
Taco Belly?
Much better than Taco Bell.
Alright.
After finishing dinner, we said goodbye to our wives and then headed back to the hotel to end day 1 of our 14-day Route 66 journey. That's it for our first day on Route 66, watching the sun fade over the wigwams. Tomorrow we're heading to Arizona. Morning day 2, we are leaving the Wigwam Motel and we're on our way to Arizona. It's about 215 miles from here. First stop in San Bernardino, the historic California Theater, which was built in 1928. Because of the amount of things we were trying to fit in, a lot of stuff wasn't open in the beginning or the end of the day. So we just saw both the California Theater and the McDonald's Museum from the outside. Next up is the site of the original McDonald's. It's not open right now, but it's a cool museum if you get a chance to check it out. I have a full video on this museum in the description if you're interested in learning more about it. Leaving San Bernardino, we made our way up through the Cajon Pass to the town of Victorville. This is the Summit Inn right behind me. It's at the top of the Cajon Pass. There used to be a restaurant here and they sold ostrich burgers, all sorts of crazy stuff. All that's left is a sign though after it burned in a fire. Heading on into the actual town of Victorville, we made it to the Victorville Route 66 Museum. This is the Route 66 Museum. It's not open on Mondays and Tuesdays, but here's a few pictures of the last time I was here. Since I've been exploring California for so long, I've been to pretty much all these places, so it was nice to have some pictures and video from previous trips. As you exit Victorville on D Street, Route 66 leaves the freeway and spends the next 40 miles on an old alignment as you make your way to Barstow. This is definitely a section you don't want to miss. Emma Jean's is a great place for a burger if you're looking for lunch, but we're heading to Bottle Tree Ranch. As you leave Emma Jean's, you'll head under this awesome steel truss bridge, one of the many epic bridges you're going to see on your Route 66 journey. Before getting to Bottle Tree Ranch, stop at this old gas station which is about 6 miles south. I don't know much about this gas station, but I read online that it was built in 1935. Every time I visit it, it seems to get more and more run down. 6 miles later, you'll make it to one of the most iconic spots on the entire Route 66 drive. This is my favorite stop on the California portion of Route 66, Elmer's Bottle Tree Ranch. Unfortunately, Elmer passed away 2 weeks after we visited the ranch, and so I'm not sure what's in store for the future of this historic spot. It does appear that it's going to reopen, so hopefully it'll be there if you take this drive. What do you think?
This place is crazy unique. It's interesting how everything is topped with something that has almost like a different theme and such. It's really awesome.
I've gotten a chance to talk with Elmer a few times over the years, and he was always such a fantastic guy that was open to answering all of your questions and telling you more about his art. It's definitely one of my favorite roadside attractions to see in the entire state of California. Alright, we're leaving Bottle Tree Ranch and we're going to the museum in Barstow. Once you make it to Main Street in Barstow, you'll see lots of Route 66 related stuff. They have a few historic Route 66 motels and lots of murals all around the streets. There's even a map online with all the mural locations if you want to see them all. The main thing we were planning on doing in Barstow was to see the Route 66 Museum. We were planning to go to this museum, but it is closed for the holidays. I have visited this museum a few times over the years, and while it's relatively small, it's definitely worth a stop as it has some nice exhibits. Plus, it's situated in one of the old Harvey houses, and this one was built in 1911 and features a lot of old train cars that you can see outside as well. From the museum, we passed some more old hotels and some murals as we made our way out of Barstow and into the town of Daggett. We're in the town of Daggett. This is the stone hotel behind me. It was built in the 1800s and frequented by John Muir. Supposedly, the old liquor store is also a historic spot in Daggett. By this time, we were ready for lunch and our options had become pretty limited, so we decided to stop at the Baghdad Cafe. Built in the 50s, this restaurant became famous because of a German language film. When we were there was a lot of people coming in and taking photos, so it must be pretty popular in Europe. If you have the option though, it may be better to just stop for lunch in Barstow. So we were planning to go to Amboy, but unfortunately, the road to Amboy is closed as well. Here's some photos from last time I was there. The town of Amboy is located pretty much out by itself on Route 66. It's historic for two things. One is the old neon sign that supposedly is being rebuilt so that it will light back up again, and two, the Amboy crater, which is a volcanic crater right outside the small town that people can hike to. Continuing on from Amboy, or just getting off the freeway for us, you'll eventually see a sign for the town of Goffs. This is our last stop in California, Goff's Schoolhouse. If you come here on a Saturday or Sunday, they're usually open. You can go in and check it out. It's a schoolhouse from the early 1900s. While it's really out of the way for the normal traveler, anyone on Route 66 should definitely try to stop by here when it's open. This schoolhouse in the middle of nowhere has been really well preserved with lots of interesting information in the interior part of the building. Also on the outside, there's a bunch of trails that lead to old cars and mining materials and all sorts of things for you to see. There's even some signs for the nearby Mitchell Caverns, which used to be on the road, and an old school bus that's cool to photograph. Almost finished our first state on Route 66.
It's been pretty epic. Little ups and downs with what's open and what's closed, but it's been pretty epic.
All that was left for us to see in California was a few stops in the town of Needles. The first stop is the old Harvey House and train station known as the El Garces. There's not much to see there, but it is a historic building on the route. Apart from that, there's the Needles wagon on the way out of town and the National Old Trails sign, as well as a few old motel signs. The last thing we wanted to see though was the Old Trails Bridge, which crosses the Colorado. We did a little research and figured out that you could get off the exit before you get into Arizona, go along the Colorado River and under the current bridge in order to get a good view of it. That is the highway, the current Route 66 highway right here. But this is what they used to drive across in the 40s, and it's way cooler. We left California. It looks like Arizona is actually excited for us to be here.
Look at that.
Turn right, Route 66. After crossing over the Colorado River and seeing Old Trails Bridge and the famous Needles, we made it into Arizona. We passed California and we're entering into Arizona. From the state line, you'll get off immediately on Oatman Highway, and you'll start the longest uninterrupted stretch of Route 66 that's still left. It's about 158 miles and it goes from the Colorado River to around the town of Ash Fork. Made it to our first stop in Arizona, Oatman, where we're gonna get some dinner and check out all of the donkeys that are supposedly exploring the town. Located in the Black Mountains, one of the most picturesque parts of the Route 66 drive, Oatman is famous for the way the town's been preserved and for the fact that donkeys just wander the streets. We got there pretty late in the day, but we were still able to make a few stops.
It was bound to happen eventually.
How do I get out of here? These are the residents of Oatman. Hey, donkey. After hanging out with the donkeys, we headed into the Oatman Hotel to grab dinner. This hotel is supposedly haunted and it was built in 1902. It's also where Clark Gable and Carole Lombard spent their honeymoon night, and you can still see the room upstairs. The restaurant walls are lined with dollar bills and you can make your mark and then staple them to the wall. ThroughMyLens.com. We grabbed burgers here right before they closed and then explored a little bit more of the town. Oatman Hotel, that's where we went for dinner. Good food, fun atmosphere, dollar bills everywhere. Definitely look at when they closed though, because they stopped serving at 5:30 when we came. The small town had a few more things to explore, but most of it was closed, and so we headed on to our next destination. This would be a fun but hot time to be in Oatman. Very nice. Do not miss Oatman when you come to Arizona. It is such a fun town. The drive from Oatman to Kingman is one of the most beautiful on all of Route 66, as it winds up through the Black Mountains and takes you over Sitgreaves Pass. This area used to be dangerous in the 20s and 30s, as the steep downhill slant was tough for many drivers. After going over the pass, you'll get to Cool Springs, which has a small museum and gift shop, and it's a fun place to grab a drink. When we finally made it to Kingman, it was dark, so we took some time to drive around and see the neon signs before going to bed. Day 3, leaving from the Rambling Rose in Kingman, and we're heading to Flagstaff tonight. We didn't get to see much of Kingman the night before, so we backtracked a little bit to see what the town had to offer before heading on. First stop of the day, Powerhouse Museum. One of the things you'll notice about Route 66 is that most of the major towns have their own Route 66 museum. Some are definitely better than others, and the one in Kingman, Arizona is one of the best. It has a ton of history and interactive exhibits that you can see, and I definitely recommend that you stop by. When you're in Arizona, you can pick up a passport, and you can get stamps for the different locations that you visit. This is where we learned about the Route 66 passports, and you can get one just for the state of Arizona, or you can get one for the entire drive. I recommend the one for the entire drive, as it's a lot of fun to stop and get stamps and little trinkets that they give you. Across the street from the Powerhouse Museum, there's also a fun little diner. It was too early for food for us, but if you check it out, let me know how it is in the comments. On the way out of town, we stopped again at the historic hotel, which supposedly has the world's longest Route 66 map. I can't verify that, but it is pretty long. This is our first stop today, the town of Hackberry. This is basically the only thing in the town, the general store. Hackberry was once a popular mining town, but then it became a ghost town in the early 1900s. Once Route 66 went through it, this store became popular for travelers, and it's still one of the best general stores on the entire route today. Don't forget to stop by the garage they have set up in the back as well. From there, we made our way to Peach Springs and stopped at one of the coolest signs I saw in Arizona. These old signs are everywhere on Route 66, but this was one of the ones that was in the best condition. There wasn't much to see in Peach Springs other than getting our next stamp, so we continued on. Next up, we're outside of Peach Springs and we're taking the Caverns tour, which is an hour tour about 200 feet below the ground. There are many caves on Route 66, but this is one of the first you'll get to if you're driving west to east. My dad hates small spaces, so I left him upstairs and I went down and took the cave tour. This cave is especially unique because there's a restaurant that you can reserve to eat at, and there's a room that you can stay at in the bottom of the cave. It's expensive, but I have to imagine it's a pretty crazy experience. The cave also has a lot of interesting history and unique formations to see, and it was definitely a lot of fun. I would recommend it if you like this type of thing. From there, it was on to Seligman, one of the most famous towns on Route 66. We're in the town of Seligman, Arizona. This is definitely one you don't want to miss. So much cool stuff to see here, and it was the town that Cars was based off of. Seligman was on Route 66 from 1926 to 1978, when Highway 40 bypassed it by only a few miles. This essentially killed the town until Angel Delgadillo revived it and made it what it is today, one of Route 66's most popular stops. Don't leave the town without visiting Angel's shop. He's one of the people who was responsible for actually saving Route 66. It's definitely cool to check out when you're in Seligman. If you're lucky, you may even run into Angel, but either way, be sure to check out the shop and grab some memorabilia. Across the street is the Snowcap Drive-In, which was run by Angel's brother Juan, and which has Cars memorabilia all around it and is a super fun place to stop for lunch. It's a good sized hot dog.
Everything you would expect in a jalapeno burger.
After finishing lunch, we left Seligman and made our way through Ash Fork. There wasn't much to see there other than a few old buildings and signs.
We're now in Williams, Arizona.
The city of Williams, Arizona was the last spot that was bypassed on Route 66, and it's a bustling town for tourists with lots of shops, neon lights, hotels, and other Route 66 memorabilia. It's also the gateway to the Grand Canyon, and you can ride a train to the Grand Canyon from Williams if you have an extra day while you're driving Route 66. I would recommend just parking your car in the downtown area and walking up and down the main street seeing what the city has to offer. This is the world's largest steel Route 66 sign. Also, on the north side of the main street, there's an old gas station that's been turned into a free museum that you can see. Look at this, they used a train car for a bridge. Williams is also a good jumping off point for the Grand Canyon. You can actually take the train there. We're not going this time, but you can also drive from Flagstaff, and here's some clips of last time I was there. Many people choose to visit the Grand Canyon while driving Route 66. If you want to do that, it's about an hour and a half from Williams to the South Rim, and that's a great area with tons of viewpoints down into the canyon and things that you can see. If you choose to go from Flagstaff, it's about an hour and a half to a different and less touristy part of the Grand Canyon, which has the Desert View Watchtower, one of my favorite things to see on the rim. Alright, now back to Route 66 with our arrival at Flagstaff. We made it to Flagstaff. Our first stop is at the Museum Club. It was a taxidermy place in the 30s, then it turned into a bar. We're gonna go grab a drink. The Museum Club is an awesome historic Route 66 watering hole, and it's still a place where you can see taxidermy animals and catch some live music. After grabbing a drink, we headed back into Flagstaff to check into our hotel. Just checked into our hotel in Flagstaff, the Hotel Monte Vista. Super cool spot from the 1930s, right in the middle of downtown Flagstaff. This hotel opened in 1927, it's supposedly haunted, and it's had many famous guests.
Michael J. Fox, Bing Crosby, pretty cool.
After getting checked into the hotel, we walked around downtown and made our way over to Lumberyard Brewing Company for dinner.
We got the tri-tip, but we got poblano chili cheese grits, baby. It's going to be amazing.
This spot had great food, and it was right next to the train tracks, so it was cool to watch the trains go by as we sat on the outside patio. After dinner, we walked around downtown a little bit, saw the neon lights, and then headed back to our hotel to play some darts and crash for the night.
Back in our amazing hotel after a day of traveling through Arizona, playing darts. Fabulous day. End of day 3.
To start our second day in Arizona, we took advantage of our downtown location and went to Fire Creek Coffee Company. Starting day 4, we are leaving Flagstaff, got some coffee, we're on our way to New Mexico.
Gotta get our stamp at the Flagstaff Visitor Center before we leave.
I also kept noticing that a lot of places had the Smash Penny machine, so I decided to start collecting those as well. On the way out of town, there was a few more signs and old buildings to see before making our way to our first stop. This is our first stop today, about 15 miles outside of Flagstaff, Twin Arrows. Twin Arrows was another favorite stopping point for people on Route 66 as the two arrows beckoned them into the trading post that sat nearby. Unfortunately, when Highway 40 came, it was hard to keep the trading post in business and it became the ghost town that it is today. Basically, the same thing can be said for the businesses at our next stop in Two Guns, which was also a place that people stopped, but that became a ghost town with Highway 40. This is the ghost town of Two Guns. There's not much to see here anymore. There's this old abandoned gas station and then a few old buildings out there as well, but that's basically it. After leaving Two Guns, if you have time, you can go to Meteor Crater National Landmark. This attraction is pricey, but it gives you access to a viewpoint from which you can see a crater that was created by an 150-foot meteor that impacted the Earth. It's certainly something unique to see while you're driving through Arizona. From there was about a 25-minute drive to our next stop in Winslow. Our first stop in the city was at the Visitor Center, where we saw some of the exhibits they had on Route 66 and Native American history and got our passport stamped. Look at this awesome piece of petrified wood I got at the Visitor Center in Winslow, Arizona.
So these sculptures were created by Peter Toth in the 70s and the 80s. He traveled our nation and created these things. These are called the Trail of the Whispering Giants to honor Native Americans.
The sculpture, a few Burma shave signs, and these old trains were all in the park that's right next to the Visitor Center. From there, we headed into the downtown area and stopped at what's supposedly the world's smallest church before making it to the main attraction in the city. We made it to Winslow, Arizona, standing on the corner park over there from the Eagles song. Take it easy.
There's a flatbed Ford right there.
Standing on a corner park is an area that honors the famous Eagles song Take It Easy and the line that talks about being in Winslow, Arizona. I can't play it for you because I probably would get a copyright strike, but you can hear my dad singing it a little bit in the background.
It's a girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford, slowing down.
While you're here, check out the Old Trails Museum. It's free and there are a bunch of small exhibits in there. If you're into the history, the museum is right next to Standing on a Corner Park, and while it doesn't have a lot of Route 66 history, it has a lot of area history. On the way out of town, stop at La Posada, which is an old Harvey House hotel with lots of things to see and history in the lobby area. This hotel is really beautiful and it has a fancy dining area if you're looking for a place to eat, or a bunch of rooms if you're looking for a place to stay. We just walked around the lobby and hallways and saw a lot of the art and decor that they had on display. From there, it was back in the car for another 20-minute drive to our next stop. This is our next stop, the Jackrabbit Trading Post in Arizona. Yeah, there you go.
It's meant for a small child.
It looks like it's about built for you, that Jackrabbit does. The Jackrabbit Trading Post was one of my favorite stops on Route 66 in Arizona. You'll see the Silhouette Rabbit sign all the way to Chicago with mileage noting how far you are from the Jackrabbit Trading Post as you continue your drive. Heck yes. Look at that stamp.
Nice.
That's one of the best ones we've got so far, I think.
You have to be sure to check into the Jackrabbit Trading Post. Great prices, and the people who run there are just great people.
Right before Hallbrook, you can stop at Geronimo Trading Post. They say they have the world's largest piece of petrified wood. This goes down into the earth, and then all the pieces that fell around it were all once part of this tree. There's also another trading post here with lots of different things for sale, including petrified wood if you're interested. This is the second Wigwam Motel on Route 66. We're in Hallbrook right now. We're not staying here tonight because we already stayed in the San Bernardino one, but it's still a really cool spot. Definitely worth staying at if you're driving the route. This one's especially cool because there's classic cars outside every one of the wigwams. This is a really fun photo spot. All the classic cars and the wigwams behind it are awesome to see. On the way out of town, there's a museum here if you want to check it out. It's free, has some exhibits, a little bit about Route 66, but it's a cool building to see. After looking at the different exhibits in the museum, it was 25 minutes to our next stop. We made it to Petrified Forest National Park, the only park that had a piece of Route 66 that went through it, so we're driving about 15 minutes in the park to go check it out. This park is a beautiful place to spend some time in Arizona, and the Painted Desert Inn was a Route 66 landmark in the 20s and 30s that people stayed at, but now it's just a museum that you can check out on your way to the Route 66 exhibit. This is the thing you have to see when you go into the inn. It's a petroglyph that they found in the Blue Mesa. Look at how big it is with my 6-foot dad next to it. Pop's exploring the Painted Desert.
Painted Desert is amazing. We got a perfect day here with beautiful blue sky too.
Definitely do. This is where historic Route 66 goes through the park. There's an old abandoned car here, and then the telephone pole line is the original alignment. We're not gonna explore the park anymore, but you can click in the description to see a video on the entire park, which you need about a half day to a full day for. All right, we're leaving the park and we're heading on to New Mexico. On the way to New Mexico, we stopped off to take a picture of a few more signs and to make our last stop at an old ghost town called Fort Courage. This is Fort Courage. It's the replica of an old TV show set from the show F Troop. It's basically abandoned now. I didn't know what F Troop was myself, but my dad was excited to explore it a little bit. There's also another great trading post known as Yellow Horse right on the border of Arizona and New Mexico that you can stop at. It was late in the day on our 4th day of travel when we crossed over from Arizona to New Mexico. Leaving Arizona and entering into New Mexico. We only drove about 25 minutes over the border to get to the town of Gallup and our hotel, the El Rancho. This hotel was one of the most unique places we stayed on our entire Route 66 journey. It opened in 1937 and many famous guests stayed there over the years. It still has a lot of that old charm and it's become a landmark on Route 66. Made it to Gallup and to our hotel, the El Rancho. That is the end of day 4. Starting day 5 and we're leaving Gallup and going to Santa Rosa. Shout out to the El Rancho Hotel, it was a cool place to stay. After leaving our hotel, we backtracked to downtown Gallup, grabbed some coffee cake, walked around the downtown a little bit, and then headed on. Most of the early part of this drive was spent paralleling Highway 40 on Route 66. We made it to the Continental Divide. The Continental Divide in New Mexico is a small town with a trading post, and it's the area that splits the water that flows to the Pacific Ocean from the water that flows to the Atlantic Ocean. This is in case you need some fireworks on your drive. From there, we headed to our next stop, Grants, New Mexico. This is a drive-through sign, and supposedly at nighttime it's neon. We drove through the sign and explored the surrounding park and then went over to the mining museum, which is the most popular stop in this town. The mining museum is actually a really cool stop on Route 66. It talks all about the area's history of uranium mining, showing you the process that they go through to get the uranium, and even having a downstairs basement that features a walk-through mine showing the entire process in an interactive exhibit. Driving east from Grants, we made it to one of my favorite gas station signs that I saw in New Mexico. And then we continued on to the ruins on the western outskirts of Cubero. Not much is left of the ruins anymore, so we just walked around a little bit and then continued on. On the way out of Cubero, there's a cool old trading post, but there's not a lot on this stretch of Route 66 to see. Heading on, we made it to Dead Man's Curve, which was an especially dangerous part of Route 66 because of the 100-degree curve and the deer that would often cause traffic to go off the road. Also, right near Dead Man's Curve is a rock that resembles an owl. This rock is known as Owl Rock. Do you see it? Let me know in the comments. We're getting close to Albuquerque, and this is the Rio Puerco Bridge.
You can see why they don't let you drive on this bridge anymore.
This truss bridge was built in 1933 and was a part of Route 66 all the way until it got realigned to Highway 40. You can still walk on it today, and it's a good stop as it's a beautiful old bridge. This is the Enchanted Trails Resort right outside of Albuquerque, home of one of 2 stamps for New Mexico in the Route 66 Passport Stamp Book. I probably wouldn't have stopped here if it didn't have a stamp for the book that we were collecting, but it did have a nice outdoor area with some old cars and old Airstreams that you could see. Next, we made it to the city of Albuquerque, stopped to see a few historic signs, and then went to the downtown area known as Old Town Albuquerque. Old Town Albuquerque has a beautiful plaza area with lots of shops surrounding it that you can walk around and see. There's also restaurants and a beautiful old church on the plaza as well. San Felipe de Neri Church was built in 1793 and it's one of the oldest surviving churches in the city. It's been in continuous use for over 200 years and it's open to the public daily if you want to walk in and see it. Our next stop in the area was a little bit different though. In Old Town Albuquerque, definitely stop by the Rattlesnake Museum. Sure, this museum doesn't have anything to do with Route 66, and I had no idea that it was even there before I visited, but who doesn't want to see the world's largest collection of different types of rattlesnake species all in one little area? My dad and I had a blast walking around and checking this place out, and it's definitely worth the price of admission to see the snakes and to get a certificate of bravery at the end. For lunch, we headed over to the Dog House in Albuquerque, which was one of our favorite food stops on the entire route. This spot has been making killer chili cheese dogs at its current location since the 1960s. This is the best hot dog in New Mexico.
That is really good. Not just saying that for the video.
10 out of 10?
10 out of 10.
Gotta see if Pops was actually telling the truth or not. I like good hot dogs. Spicy, good chili. I agree. If you guys like chili dogs, don't pass this place. It is so freaking good. From there, we made it to the heart of Albuquerque, where a lot of the Route 66 stuff is no longer there. There's 12 of these statues on Old Trails Highway, only 2 of them on Route 66, and this is one of them in Albuquerque. The 12 Madonna of the Trail statues are dedicated to the spirit of the pioneer women in the United States, and they go all the way from California to Maryland. There's also a fun old Route 66 diner that you can see and eat at on the way out of town, but as you can tell from the previous clips, we had already had lunch. It was worth stopping by to see it though. Alright, so from here you have to decide if you want to go to Santa Fe or not. If you do, it's about 2 hours out of the way, and that's without stopping to see anything. That being said, if you have at least a half day, I love going up to Santa Fe and seeing all of the historic stuff they have in that city. Some of my favorite spots in Santa Fe are the Santa Fe Plaza, the Loreto Chapel, and the Pecos Historic Park. Plus, not Route 66 related, but if you have kids, you should definitely go to Meow Wolf as well. You can see all of these recommendations in the Santa Fe video I made in the description, but now back to my dad and I's drive where we left Albuquerque and went straight to Santa Rosa. After leaving Albuquerque, there wasn't much to see basically all the way to Santa Rosa. That's why I recommended that if you have the time, you should go up to Santa Fe and do that route, as there's a lot more to see up there. Alright, it's 6 o'clock at night. We just got to Santa Rosa to the Blue Hole. It's still 93 degrees, so we're gonna jump in the water even though it's 61. The Blue Hole of Santa Rosa was a welcome spot for many overheated Route 66 travelers. The 61-degree water is still a really popular spot for people in New Mexico to visit, and it's one of the top places to learn how to scuba dive in the United States. We were just there to jump off the cliff into the water though. Yeah! This is way colder than I anticipated it being. That's enough adventure for today. Back to the hotel, end of day 5. Day number 6, we're leaving our hotel in Santa Rosa with the end goal being Amarillo, Texas. Before leaving Santa Rosa, we're stopping at the Route 66 Car Museum. This museum is a lot bigger than it looks from the outside, and it probably has 30 to 40 old vintage and unique cars for you to see. Neither my dad or I are big car buffs, but we both really enjoyed the museum. I've been to a lot of auto museums, but I've never seen this before. From there, we stopped in the ghost town of Cuervo, which was a railroad town and then became a Route 66 stop before Highway 40 bypassed it and it became a ghost town. Of all the ghost towns we saw on this route, this one definitely had one of the most ruins for you to explore. Driving on, we got to another ghost town in the town of Newkirk. Check out this old service station in the ghost town of Route 66. This is truly a barren section of Route 66, and it really shows you how Highway 40 devastated some of these small towns. A little while later, we saw another ghost town with a few more buildings that had been left in disrepair.
Look at the adobe construction on this old building. Pretty crazy. Where's the cold beer at? Promise me cold beer.
Leaving the ghost towns behind us, we made our way forward to Tucumcari, one of the favorite towns for Route 66 travel in New Mexico. During this section of the drive, this is one of the towns you want to plan to spend the most amount of time, plus it's a good place to spend the night as well, as they have a lot of old, historic Route 66 hotels and motels. Made it to Tucumcari, which is a popular Route 66 town. First stop, the museum. Like I said previously, most of the major towns on Route 66 have a museum. We tried to stop at all of them, and this one was especially cool because of the photographic exhibit they had. It's up to you how many of these you'll want to stop at on your drive on Route 66 though. Check out this old sign, you can still see a piece of it that's fallen down right here. Tucumcari has a lot of nostalgic Route 66 to see, from old signs that are still in good condition to retrofitted gas stations and even trading posts. I got a chance to chat with the Motel Safari owner, and he was a great guy who shared the love for Route 66 by buying a motel and making it more modern and exciting for guests to stay at. Heading a few blocks down the street will take you to the Blue Swallow Motel, which is an iconic neon sign on Route 66 that's popular for photography. Unfortunately, we were there in the middle of the day, so we didn't get to take any pictures of it at night. And also, when I called to stay there, it was booked up as well, so if you want to stay at this iconic hotel, you definitely need to book it in advance.
Before you leave town, this is a great spot to check out.
On the way out of Tucumcari, definitely stop by TP Curio's shop. It has a lot of fun Route 66 memorabilia, plus it had a passport stamp and another penny smash machine. Basically, the rest of Route 66 in New Mexico is the same as the earlier part of the day, with not a lot to see other than some abandoned gas stations and ruins. One of the coolest parts if you want that old historic Route 66 vibe is from San Juan to Glen Rio.
We didn't even realize that this is a dirt road portion of Route 66, but getting to cross some cool bridges, a lot of fun.
This section is 14 miles of dirt which goes through old homesteads and over old bridges.
You can see the highway way out there, but we are on original Route 66 dirt road.
For both my dad and I, this was one of the coolest sections in the state as it gave you a real feel for what Route 66 would have been like for the early travelers. It's not for everyone though, and if you want a faster trip, you probably want to skip this section and just stay on the highway. Route 66 is paralleling the freeway when you cross over the Texas state line in the ghost town of Glen Rio. We backtracked a little bit on the freeway so we could capture the Welcome to Texas sign as well.
We're leaving New Mexico and entering into state number 4, Texas.
Even though it's only about 175 miles, there's still a bunch of fun attractions in the state of Texas. Here's our first one.
We've officially made it to the midpoint of Route 66, only 1,100 miles left to go.
The Midpoint Cafe is supposedly the halfway point on your Route 66 journey. It's a great place to stop and get food, and legend has it that the owner from 1990 to 2012 was the inspiration for Flo in the movie Cars. Don't leave without trying the pie. They have revolving flavors, and the one I had was incredible.
Whiskey, chocolate, pecan, pie. So good. Even if you're not hungry, be sure to stop at the Midpoint Cafe for pie. It's definitely worth the trip.
From there, we headed to the town of Vega, which is basically the first town you'll see in Texas.
Look at this welcome I'm getting to Texas. Exactly what I would expect.
The main stop in Vega is at the Cultural Museum that they had. It had a ton of great exhibits on Route 66 and a lot of really knowledgeable people. Plus we got a passport stamp and they let us print our own postcard.
Yeah,
Alright.
just pull that forward.
I'm printing my own.
Start spinning that wheel towards yourself. And it will stamp it. It almost embosses it. And if you
Dang.
look how it's like you can feel it through it.
Wow,
Little bags for it.
that is super cool.
There's also an old service station across the street, but it wasn't open when we were there. We got back in the car and headed on, excited about our next stop, which is one of the most iconic places on the entire route.
It is the Cadillac Ranch.
Way out there. Cadillac Ranch is a public art installation outside of Amarillo, Texas that began in the 1970s when 10 Cadillacs were buried nose down in the ground. It's open to the public and you can bring your own spray paint and make your mark on any of the different cars. I have to admit, it was a lot more fun than I thought to paint on these old cars.
Check out my dad up there doing works of art.
We spent probably a good 45 minutes here, and it's hilarious how you finish painting something and somebody immediately comes up and paints over it.
Left our mark on Cadillac Ranch, at least for 10 minutes.
If that.
Route 66, Josh and Jeff, 2019. We finished our time at Cadillac Ranch. It's a ton of fun, definitely something you want to do on Route 66. Now we're heading to our hotel at the Big Texan and we're gonna get a steak.
When in Texas, you gotta go big, right? What better than the Big Texan Steak Ranch?
We made it to the Big Texan Ranch. Here is our room. Very nice. Look at even the pool is shaped like the state of Texas.
Unfortunately, the pool was closed for cleaning, so I didn't get to jump in, but we did get to meet the steer that was out front and explore the property.
Yeah, and there you go. Way better than Pops. You get all of them.
As we waited for our dinner reservations, we walked all over the restaurant, saw the jail, the big cowboy boot, the big chair, and all the other crazy stuff there is to see here.
So this steak is $72, and if you eat it in 1 hour, you get it for free. But look at how gigantic that thing is. Plus, you gotta eat shrimp, baked potato, a salad, and bread. The fastest person has done it in 4 minutes and 30 seconds. We're staying away.
Eventually our table was ready and we sat down for our steak dinner to finish the day.
To anyone saying that we're not healthy, look, we got salads.
This is green.
My dad went with the steak and I went with the baby back ribs. It was a fitting only dinner in Texas for us.
We just had an awesome meal of steak and ribs, and luckily our hotel room is right over there. That's the end of day 6. Morning day 7, we're saying goodbye to our friend at the Big Texan and heading to Oklahoma City.
On the way out of Amarillo, we stopped to see a few more old signs and old businesses before continuing our drive east. As we were driving away, we noticed some VW bugs stuck out of the ground just like Cadillac Ranch, so we stopped to check it out.
This is our first stop on the outskirts of Amarillo, the VW Slug Bug Ranch. We didn't bring any paint because we didn't know that this even existed, but it's another cool spot to check out on the way out of town.
I'm not sure what the history of this place is, as there's not a lot of information about it online, but let me know if you know about it in the comments. "30 minutes outside of Amarillo, we made it to another well-visited roadside attraction.
In the town of Groom, you can stop and see the Groom Cross.
This 19-story cross was built in 1995 and it attracts more than 1,000 visitors a day. All along the base, there are different statues that depict the life of Jesus Christ. Only a mile or so away is the Leaning Water Tower of Texas, which was built to draw attention for a local truck stop and restaurant that's unfortunately no longer there. Continuing on from Groom to McLean, the drive is relatively sparse. There is a nice service station from the 1930s that you can stop at though. As you leave on Route 66, you'll notice that it's basically just paralleling the freeway here. There are many sections of the route that look exactly like this, where the road is right next to the freeway.
We just made it to the town of McLean. First stop, the Devil's Rope Museum for barbed wire and the Route 66 Museum in the same building.
The Devil's Rope Museum was officially opened in the early 90s, and it focuses on the history of barbed wire and the over 2,000 different types of barbed wire.
In the 1890s, the cowboys used barbed wire as their telephone lines to communicate with each other.
While this may not sound exciting to you, it was actually one of my dad's favorite things that we did on Route 66.
Cool museum, lots of cowboy history, art, definitely worth checking out, especially when it's right next to the Route 66 part.
The Route 66 Museum is relatively small, but it does have some fun exhibits, especially the one on the Reptile Ranch.
This is the iconic snake from the Regal Rattler Ranch. They used to put dead rattlesnakes on the road so people who were driving by would be all freaked out thinking that the snakes escaped.
It was fun to learn about this roadside attraction here, and I kind of wish that it was still in business today.
We stayed at the Big Texan last night, and this is actually the original steer. It's probably 1/10 of the size, but pretty cool to see in the museum.
After my dad actually bought some barbed wire to take home, we went to see another service station in the town. There are tons of these along the route, so you'll have to decide how many you want to stop at, but this was definitely one of the better ones in Texas. Our last stop in Texas was a visit to U Drop Inn, also known as the Tower Station or the Tower Cafe. It's one of the most iconic buildings on the Texas portion of Route 66. That booth in the corner is where Elvis sat when he ate here driving on Route 66. There's no longer a restaurant as the whole thing is just a museum and a store, but it was a great last stop for us in the state of Texas. After spending a day and a half in Texas, we crossed over the border into Oklahoma. We're leaving Texas and entering into state number 5, Oklahoma. Crossing over the border brought us to our first stop, the town of Eric and the Sand Hills Curiosity Shop. This place is famous for Harley, who lives there and was supposedly the inspiration for Mater in the Cars movie series. It was a crack up spending 30 minutes hanging out with him, and he is an accomplished musician as well. Do note that most of his jokes are pretty off color though if you're bringing your family.
Well, hey, we want to welcome you to Eric, Oklahoma, the redneck capital of the world. Would you believe where you can see rednecks working, playing their own environment? Insanity at its finest right here at the world-class, world-famous Sand Hills Curiosity Shop, the only bus stop in town.
After ending our time with Harley, we drove 20 minutes to the town of Sayre. The main landmark in this town is the Beckham County Courthouse, which was featured in the 1940s black and white Grapes of Wrath movie. There are a few other old buildings, businesses, and signs that you can see there as well. 30 minutes later, we made it to Elk City with a little bit of time before the National Route 66 Museum was closing. We made it to Elk City, which has the largest Route 66 sign and a museum. You can see my dad there for scale. This museum states that it focuses on the people that lived and worked on Route 66 with an exhibit for each of the 8 states. We found it to be a lot of fun as it was actually pretty interactive and had a lot of great exhibits. What?
I'm ready.
Yeah, ready for the fire. It also wasn't very busy on a weekday when we were there, and my dad and I were the only people in the museum. After exploring for about 30 minutes, the museum closed and we headed on. Heading on for another 15 minutes, we made it to our next stop, Route 66 Museum Round 2. There's another big Route 66 museum in Clinton. The Route 66 Museum in Clinton prides itself on being one of the best on the route. It's hard to disagree with this, as this museum looks like it's had the most money invested in it. If you have movies to share, let them know. We've seen that one, that one, that one. The rest are yet to come. We especially enjoyed seeing the history that related to Grapes of Wrath, as we were listening to that book as we were doing the drive. This is basically the sign that we just held at that guy's shop in Eric's. Don't forget to go outside where they have a few more exhibits, including a Route 66 diner, which is in basically its original condition, and you can look through the windows and check it out. Honestly, this is a great museum and one you should definitely stop at if you have the time. By the time we left the museum, it was dinner time, so we headed to the town of Weatherford and stopped at Lucille's Roadhouse. The Roadhouse was named after Lucille's Station, which is an icon in Oklahoma on Route 66. It was an original Route 66 service station that was built in 1927. We went and visited it after we had dinner. What'd you get? Country fried steak?
Country fried steak.
And the Southwest salad.
That chicken looks great. Look at it, black
I'm so much healthier than Pops is. After eating, we stopped by the original Lucille's on the way out of town. It wasn't open, but it was still cool to see this historic spot. From Lucille's, we continued on towards Oklahoma City with a stop outside of Bridgeport at the William H. Murray Bridge, also known as the Pony Bridge. This bridge is almost 4,000 feet with 38 trusses, and it was also featured in the Grapes of Wrath film. We continued on to the town of El Reno, and we were hoping to make it in time to get an onion burger at Sid's, but unfortunately it was closed when we got there, so let me know if you have one in the comments and if it was worth a stop. There was also what appeared to be a donut shop in an old service station and a cool Yukon's Best Flower building on the outskirts of town. We eventually made it into the town of Oklahoma City with a quick stop to view another bridge before ending the day. As we were driving to our hotel, we decided we really wanted to see Pop's Soda Ranch in the dark, as they have an awesome huge LED soda bottle that's lit up with colorful lights at nighttime. We made the 25-minute drive out there, and it was definitely worth it to see it lit up at night.
Morning day 8, we're leaving Oklahoma City. There's a severe thunderstorm warning this morning for the next 2 hours, so we'll see how today goes. We're heading to Tulsa.
We're only hitting a few spots in Oklahoma City, but if you want to spend some time in the area, check out the other video I made on the city's best spots in the description. There's some really amazing places to see, like the Bricktown area, Cattleman's, and the National Cowboy Museum. But anyways, back to the drive.
First stop today on the way out of town, the Milk Bottle Building.
This little building was built in the 1930s with the milk bottle added to the top in 1948, and it's only 350 square feet, but it's one of the most iconic spots on Route 66. Leaving Oklahoma City on the way out of town, there was another trading post that didn't seem to be open, and an Owl Court service station that was being rebuilt.
This is our last stop in Oklahoma City. It's the Territorial School, the oldest building in the county and the site of the first recorded wedding in the county.
While it wasn't open and it didn't have much to do with Route 66, it was still fun to stop at this old school on the way out of town. Leaving Oklahoma City brought us to the town of Arcadia and Pop's Soda Ranch that we had seen the night before.
We're at Pop's, the new soda shop on Route 66. They have over 400 sodas in the store. We're each gonna pick one out and the other person has to drink it.
The inside of Pop's is fun to explore with a lot of different sodas to see, and there's also a restaurant here if you're hungry as well.
Alright, I got Pop's, the Pimple Pop Soda. Really wanted ranch dressing, but they were sold out, so we'll see how this goes.
The most disgusting label ever. Not bad, tastes like marshmallows.
What?
This may not seem disgusting, but I know Josh hates celery.
He got way luckier. I had to get marshmallow flavor. This is like my least favorite food in the whole world. That's disgusting. Right down the road from Pop's is our next stop, the Arcadia Round Barn.
As supposedly one of the most photographed spots on Route 66, the Arcadia Round Barn was built in 1898, and it's really cool to see in person. The downstairs has a lot of exhibits on the history of the area, and it has antiques for purchase, but the true highlight is the second floor. Built as a community gathering place, the second floor of this building is truly incredible. It was even damaged in the 80s, and a group of volunteers brought it back to life so that we can still see it today. There's also an old drugstore in the town, but it wasn't open and it looks like it's been converted into office buildings.
Right on the outskirts of town, there's this old stone gas station. There's not much left of it, but there is a story that says that they did counterfeiting in the back of the gas station right through that window.
After leaving the town, we started getting hungry, so we stopped at Butcher Barbecue Stand, which ended up being one of our favorite meals on all of Route 66. Apparently this place had won a ton of awards on barbecue-related food TV shows, and there was a long line for lunchtime, so we knew we stumbled on something good. This is the meat locker at Butcher's Barbecue Stand, a Route 66 highlight. Bring your appetite though.
It says serves 4 people.
Gotta do the rib, baby. Oh my gosh, just falls off the bone.
Good stuff.
Amazing.
We tried our hardest, but there was no way we could finish this, even though it was absolutely amazing. Honestly, the entire time we were on Route 66 in Oklahoma, we just kept stumbling on cool things. The same can be said for the town of Warwick when we stopped at what looked like an old service station and it ended up being an amazing motorcycle museum. I know literally nothing about motorcycles myself, but even I was blown away by how cool this museum was and how many unique different types of motorcycles they had to see. The station also has what was supposedly a state-of-the-art outhouse for the 1930s in the back. It's not in great shape, but you can still see it. Driving on, we passed one of the famous Merrimack Cavern signs, which are all over the route, and then continued to the town of Chandler. Our first stop there was at a service station, and then we ended up needing some service for our car as well.
We've realized that our Hertz rental has completely bald tires. We didn't realize that going in. We're having to change the tire in front of an old gas station, which is about as Route 66 as it gets.
After changing the tire, we arranged a car switch in Tulsa, but headed over to the Route 66 Interpretive Center before leaving the city.
Pops is taking in the museum.
Neon Nights.
From their bed you can watch the video from.
Not a bad way to watch a museum movie. This museum is especially interesting as it has beds that you can watch movies that are played above you from, plus there's a lot of photographic exhibits and other things that you can see. Heading on, we passed into the town of Davenport, which had another old service station to see. There's a lot of these on the road. This town is mostly known for the Rock Cafe, which has a famous neon sign, and it's a popular place to get a meal while driving Route 66. We didn't eat there, but we stopped and signed our names in chalk outside, went into the store, explored a little bit, and then headed on. Also, on the way out of town, keep your eyes peeled for the cool old Chrysler sign they have near the train station. This is the heart of Route 66 Museum outside of Tulsa. It's not open right now, but check out that old gas pump. I didn't see any signs, but I have to imagine that's the world's largest gas pump. Let me know how this museum is in the comments if you get a chance to see it. Our last stop before making it to Tulsa was the town of Sapulpa. They had some old murals and signs about Route 66 right in the middle of the downtown. We made it to Tulsa. We went to Hertz, got the car exchange. Shout out to them for making that process super easy. This is the East meets West statue, and we're gonna explore a little bit. This statue was designed to honor Cyrus Avery, who was responsible for making Route 66 a national highway and for making it go through the city of Tulsa.
And that right there is the old Route 66 bridge. This is the recent one.
The 11th Street Bridge was created in 1915 and was used until the 70s. Now it's unsafe even for pedestrians, and so you can only look at it. There's a really awesome walking and biking path down here as well. We're heading out to the Mother Road Market. It's like a food court in downtown Tulsa, and then back to our hotel. Honestly, Tulsa is one of the best cities on all of Route 66. There's so much preserved history here, including old signs and even new roadside attractions. So as we were driving to the food hall, we came across Buck Adam, which is a cowboy that was put here in 2018. We didn't even know he existed until today. The sign outside the building said that in May 2018, Buck's spaceship landed in the city of Tulsa. It's really fun to see Route 66 coming back alive with some new attractions like this. We made it to the Mother Road Market, Tulsa's Route 66 food hall. The Mother Road Market in Tulsa has all sorts of fun pop-up restaurants and shops to explore with lots of different food options.
So you guys saw what we had for lunch today. So we went healthy for dinner.
Milk.
Yeah, milk. A single scoop of ice cream.
They also have a Route 66 mini golf course outside, but unfortunately there was a heavy rain the day before and it had all been flooded, so we weren't able to play. This would be a great stop with a family as it has some of the most iconic Route 66 stops right in the middle of each of the mini golf holes. From there, we drove around to see a few of the neon signs lit up at night and then made a stop at the oil driller statue.
Just to get a sense of scale, there's my dad, there's the Tulsa guy.
Known as the Golden Driller, he stands 75 feet tall and he's become an unofficial landmark for the city of Tulsa. On the way back to our hotel, we stopped at the Meadow Gold sign and at the Buck Adams Space Cowboy again to see what they looked like with the sun setting behind them. And that finished the end of our day on Route 66.
Morning day 9, we're leaving Tulsa. First stop is at the Blue Dome and we're gonna go through Kansas and make it all the way to Carthage, Missouri.
The Blue Dome is another service station that was built in 1924 and the attendant actually lived upstairs. We also stopped at the Circle Theater and a few of the interpretive sites before getting to our last stop in Tulsa, the art piece known as Route 66 Rising.
This is Tulsa's Route 66 Rising sculpture. You can see it in the roundabout on the way out of town.
Built in 2018, this sculpture represented the hope people had as they drove Route 66 for a new life. It's also a great metaphor for the city of Tulsa and how they're bringing Route 66 back to life as well. 20 minutes later, we were in the town of Catoosa at one of the most well-known landmarks on Route 66.
We're outside of Tulsa today, and this is one of the ones I really wanted to see. It's the Blue Whale.
The iconic Blue Whale of Route 66 was built by Hugh Davis in the 1970s as an anniversary gift for his wife. For decades, it was open to the public for swimming and became a popular attraction along the route, but unfortunately it fell into disrepair, and it wasn't until local efforts raised money to restore this Route 66 icon. Now today you can still experience it, you can walk through it and even climb up into its head. It was easily one of my favorite stops on the entire drive. About 20 minutes past the Blue Whale of Catoosa, we stopped at the Will Rogers Memorial Museum. This museum is dedicated to the famous entertainer and it houses all sorts of exhibits, photographs, and even videos from his life. Will Rogers has a strong connection to Route 66 as he was influential in putting the route on the map back in the early days, and the route was even unofficially named the Will Rogers Highway in 1952. All along Route 66 you'll see memorials dedicated to Will Rogers, so it was great to be able to learn more about the famous man.
While it's not technically on Route 66, definitely stop in the town of Foyle at Ed Galloway's Totem Pole Park.
About 10 minutes off Route 66 sits Ed Galloway's Totem Pole Park, which features about a dozen different totem poles, including the world's largest concrete totem pole. Standing at over 90 feet tall with a 30-foot diameter base, this totem pole was created in 1948 and it's really interesting to see. The park also has the Fiddle House, which is a concrete house that he made, and inside it has dozens of the different handcrafted fiddles he made as well. From there, we got back on Route 66 and stopped at a few old buildings and service stations before eventually making it to the town of Miami, Oklahoma. The town of Miami had an old theater to see and the famous Cuckoo Hamburgers, which is known for its sign. We continued on to the town of Commerce though, which was the hometown of Mickey Mantle. The town has a statue and a few other things you can see while you're there.
If you're interested, you can also see Mickey Mantle's childhood home while you're in Commerce. This is the coolest part of Commerce though, this old gas station connected to the building.
I was really excited to see this spot after seeing pictures online, but apparently after talking to some of the locals, it's not really that old. Anyways, it's still a cool place for pictures. Across the street is the Dairy King though, which is a historic spot on Route 66. This was a service station that was built in 1927, and then a few decades later it became the Dairy King. They make fun Route 66 cookies, and it's definitely worth stopping by.
If you're looking for something else fun in Commerce, you can pick up these Route 66 cookies right here at the Dairy King.
After leaving Commerce, we made our way over to Kansas, ending our time in Oklahoma on Route 66. As we crossed over from Oklahoma into Kansas, we were on a nice 2-lane highway, which was a great break from following Interstate 44.
We're entering into state number 6, Kansas.
The first place we got to in the state was the city of Baxter Springs. The city has a nice small town vibe with a popular restaurant called Cafe on the Route, which is in a bank that was once robbed by Jesse James. Unfortunately, it was later in the afternoon when we came through the state, so most of the things were closed and we didn't get to see a lot. We walked around the town a little bit, took some pictures of the cement emblems that line the street, and then made our way over to the historic service station on the way out of town. The service station was built in 1930 and it's on the National Register of Historic Places. It was closed when we went, but it's the main information center for Route 66 in Kansas. Heading on, we made it to the top historic attraction in Kansas, the Brush Creek Bridge. Built in 1923, this is the only remaining marsh arch bridge on Route 66. You can only drive through the bridge one way, so if you're heading in the same direction as we were, you have to go past the bridge about a quarter mile, turn around, and then come back to drive on it. After driving over the bridge and taking some pictures of it, we headed on to the town of Riverton. The main highlight in this town is the Williams store, also known as the Old Riverton store. It was built in 1925, a year before Route 66 was designated, and it's a great spot to stop on your road trip. Luckily for us, it was open and we got to walk through the store and see some of the historic photos they have on display. From there, we made it to our last town on Route 66 in Kansas, Galena. Again, basically everything was closed when we went through this town as well, but the mining museum is the first thing that you'll see, and we walked around the outside of it. Outside of the mining museum, they have a lot of equipment, a few old train cars, and even a tank.
We're about to leave Kansas, our last stop, Cars on the Route. It's not open, still cool to see the outside.
Cars on the Route is in a service station that was built in 1934, and it's been many different attractions over the years. Currently, it's capitalizing on the Cars movie series with some fun cars that look like they came right out of the movie sitting outside. About a block away from the service station, there's a park you can see as well, which has a few small information signs and a Will Rogers Memorial Highway plaque. As we crossed over into Missouri, some people told us we should take the excursion to Grand Falls before continuing on, so that's what we did.
If you want a nature excursion in Joplin, head to Grand Falls, which is about 15 minutes south. It's only about 25 feet, but right now it's been flooding and so it's going off.
While not especially tall, the waterfall does flow year-round and is about 160 feet wide. It was pretty incredible to see when we were there. Heading back to Route 66, we stopped in Webb City to see the Praying Hands roadside attraction. Sitting on top of a mountain, this 32-foot sculpture is something that you can easily see from the road. After that, it was back on the route and through the town of Joplin to Carthage, which is where we stopped at the 66 Drive-In movie theater.
We just made it to the town of Carthage, and that's where we're spending the night. This is the famous Route 66 Drive-In movie theater they have here. No movies on the weekday though, so for us, that's the end of day 9.
I said it was the end of the day, but I did make a stop at the historic Boots Court Motel, which is lit up with neon in Carthage. I had wanted to stay there, but it was sold out on the dates I went through.
Day 10, we're heading out from Carthage and going to Springfield, Missouri. You could combine yesterday and today if you wanted to, but there's a few things we want to do in Springfield, so we're keeping it a little bit easier today.
As we were leaving our hotel, the owner said we couldn't leave Carthage without seeing the Precious Moments Chapel, so we made a quick detour.
When we asked what the top attraction was in the town of Carthage, they told us it's the Precious Moments Chapel, which is a free chapel dedicated to the Precious Moments characters, I guess. I'm not super familiar with that at all, but I figured someone would probably be familiar with that on the video, so it's here in Carthage if you want to check it out.
The chapel ended up being a lot more impressive than I initially anticipated, and it was pretty cool to see with basically floor-to-ceiling art all around the chapel interior.
Back to Route 66.
On the way out of town, we made a couple more stops, first at the Phelps House just for a photo of the exterior, and then over to the Jasper County Courthouse. The Jasper County Courthouse is well worth a stop as it was built in 1894 and has a small museum inside. Just seeing the building from the outside though is really impressive. We also made another quick stop at the Boots Court Motel on the way out of town as I wanted to see it in the daylight as well. Leaving Carthage, our next stop was about 35 minutes away in the town of Spencer.
Most of the drive today is through ghost towns, but definitely pull off and stop at the town of Spencer. Lots of little storefronts here that you can peek your head in, and it definitely looks like what Route 66 would have looked like.
Spencer was a great little spot to explore, and I'm excited to see how this one changes over the years as it looks like they're continuing to work on it. As you drive away from Spencer, there's an old bridge that was built in the 1920s and that's fun to see on this stretch of Route 66. 5 minutes later brought us to our favorite stop of the day, the Gay Parita Sinclair Station. This site includes a replica gas station from the 1930s with the original pumps and all sorts of memorabilia from Route 66 history. It's crazy to see all of the stuff they have here and to talk to the people running it who are really happy for us to stop and to tell us all about the history of the area. Don't forget to go out to the garage in the back and to see the old restored truck as well.
On the way to Springfield, be sure to stop here. George, who runs the store, is amazing. He's got a ton of fun souvenirs and history, and it's definitely something you want to see.
From here, the next 25 miles or so is relatively uneventful with some small ghost towns and a few little attractions along the route.
Check out what's left of the inside of this general store. It's like a little Narnia or something in here.
The overgrown general store was the coolest part of this 25 miles, so we just continued on towards Springfield to go to Fantastic Caverns.
Took a break from Route 66 to go to Fantastic Caverns, which is a drive-through cave system outside of Springfield, Missouri. This is what we're going to be doing. There's a Jeep that pulls everyone.
After arriving, I grabbed a ticket for the next available tour and hopped on the back of the tram. My dad opted to stay in the lobby as he doesn't like claustrophobic things, and so he didn't want to go into the cave. After having been in the cave, I can easily say that it's not claustrophobic and it's a great 1-hour tour.
On the drive-through cave tour.
This cave was discovered in 1862 and it was renamed the Fantastic Caverns in 1950. It's the only cave that's entirely drive-through in the United States. The cave is about 60 degrees year-round, so it's a nice place to escape the summer heat as well. After about 45 minutes of exploring, we were heading back out the cave, and it's definitely a fun experience, especially for families on Route 66.
Here is the photo of my cave tour, and you'll notice someone's missing in the back.
I'm totally good with it.
Not a fan of caves.
No, I'm fine with it.
Leaving the Fantastic Caverns, going back to Route 66, that's a really fun excursion though.
After leaving the Fantastic Caverns, we drove south and headed back into the town of Springfield to see what they had to explore. Our first stop was at a chocolatier in the middle of the old downtown area. It was in a really cool old brick building and they gave you lots of different samples to try. In the same downtown area, there's also a cool old footbridge.
This is the longest footbridge in the United States. It's closed for renovations right now, but if you can walk on it, you get some great views of the trains and the train tracks.
Driving on, we stopped by a Steak and Shake that was built in the 1960s. While it's not the first location for that chain, it shows what it used to look like and has the old style from that time period. We made one more stop at an old theater before heading on to our hotel.
So this is our room at Bass Pro World. They even left us gummy bears at check-in. And then across the street is all of the Bass Pro stuff, the store and the aquarium and the restaurant, all sorts of stuff. Taking a break from Route 66 to visit Bass Pro Shop World. That's our hotel right there. And we're heading to the aquarium.
Known as the granddaddy of the outdoors, this Bass Pro Shop is insane with over 500,000 square feet of shopping. One of the main attractions here though is the aquarium, which has 1.5 million gallons of water and over 35,000 different live fish. That's what we decided to check out first. To say that this aquarium is impressive would be an extreme understatement. I've been in aquariums all over the United States and this is one of the best I've ever seen.
This is the shipwreck room. Check out that aquarium.
If you decide to do this, give yourself at least a few hours though, because my dad and I got here about an hour before it closed and we had to rush through it as it has over a mile of walking to see everything.
Piranhas.
There's even a full section with a bunch of different kinds of sharks and another one with a bunch of alligators.
That was an amazing aquarium.
There's also a wildlife exhibit that you can pay to enter, and it has over a mile of walking as well with many animals stuffed and displayed in their natural habitats.
This area shows what every type of deer looks like. This is definitely one of my favorite creatures, the narwhal. Look at those dudes.
After leaving the museum, we walked around the store a little bit and then ate at one of the restaurants that they had inside.
Done with the museums, done with food, back to the hotel. That is the end of day 10. Morning day 11, we are leaving our hotel and we're on our way to St. Louis. It's gonna be a long day with lots of stops, but I'm excited for it.
After leaving Springfield, we drove about 35 miles to the town of Marshfield.
In the town of Marshfield, be sure to stop by the courthouse. This is where Edwin Hubble was born, and you can see a replica of the Hubble telescope outside.
This simple fact makes it worth the stop as the replica Hubble telescope is pretty cool to see in person. Continuing on, we drove another 30 minutes to the town of Lebanon and past the world's largest gift store.
Once you get to the town of Lebanon, there's a library and the Route 66 museum is in the back.
We basically only stopped here because they had another stamp for our passport, but the museum was pretty nice and it had a few different exhibits that you could see, plus it was free to enter, which is always a positive. Our next stop was at Rink's Market, built on the outskirts of the town in 1950. It only recently reopened in the last few years, but when we were there was a power outage, so we didn't get to go inside. Right next to Rink's Market is the Munger Moss Hotel that's been here for over 70 years and has one of the best restored signs we'd seen for a motel on the route.
Unfortunately, this kind of stuff happens where a road's out and you don't even know, so it's back to the freeway for us.
Since Route 66 had been closed to that bridge, we got back on Highway 44 and made our way to Waynesville. Waynesville is still an established city today with over 4,000 residents, a courthouse, a museum, and some old historic buildings. 10 minutes later, we were at the divisive roadside attraction known as Uranus. Uranus is a fun place to explore with a general store that has shirts and all sorts of other types of memorabilia, plus a picture of the mayor and a fudge factory where you can grab some fudge. I was actually surprised by how good the fudge was, and they had a stamp for our book, plus all the puns you could possibly want.
I got fudge from Uranus. Pops does not think that Uranus is funny. He's not as sophomoric as I am.
Big time.
This is the world's largest belt buckle.
After exploring the roadside attraction just a little bit longer and making my dad pose for some photos, we made our way on to our next stop.
This is the Devil's Elbow part of Route 66. It was known because it was super dangerous for the military to come across, and so they had to actually move the road over in like the 1930s.
This area was part of the 1926 to 1943 alignment of Route 66 before it bypassed the town in order to make the route a little bit safer.
We got really lucky. We were walking around the bridge and it was sunny, and then immediately when we opened the car door, it basically just started pouring rain, so.
Continuing on, we made a quick stop at the Trail of Tears Memorial near the town of Jerome. It's only open a few days a week and we weren't there when it was open, so we just looked at the statues near the entrance before getting back on the highway. Our next stop brought us to the town of Rolla and the Totem Pole Trading Post, which is supposedly one of the oldest businesses still left in Missouri.
I've never seen this before. It looks like a gas station, but these are actually parking spots and it doesn't sell gas.
According to the man who was working there, it was established in 1933 and it was popular as a roadside attraction because it had a huge totem pole sitting on top of it. You can still see the totem pole inside of the store today. We also stopped at the Dillon House in Rolla, and it was built in 1857 and served as the county's first courthouse. Then we stopped at the Mule Trading Post to see their Waving Arms Hillbilly sign. From here, Route 66 paralleled the freeway for a while before getting to one of the stops I was the most excited to see.
The next stop, we're in Fanning, Missouri at the world's largest rocking chair.
I was told while on the route that I guess this is now the second largest rocking chair, but it still looked like a pretty big rocking chair to me. Plus, they have an awesome store with lots of things to purchase and a bunch of different kinds of popcorn, so we grabbed some for our drive. Proceeding onward, we made it to the town of Cuba, which has some murals to see, and the Four-Way restaurant, which used to be a Phillips 66 gas station. The Wagon Wheel Motel is the main draw in Cuba though, as it's been here for over 80 years and it's supposedly the oldest continuously operated motel on Route 66. We didn't get a chance to stay here, but I imagine it's a pretty cool hotel for that Route 66 vibe. Plus, it's right next to Missouri Hick Barbecue, which looked pretty fun as well. Next up was the town of Bourbon, and while I didn't see much to stop at here, it was pretty cool to see the Bourbon water towers. I imagine they get photographed pretty often.
We made it to the Merrimack Caverns. This is where Jesse James' hideout was. It's an hour and 15 minutes for the tour. About to head in.
We planned the day to get here before this closed, as I was really excited to take a tour of this cave. Plus, there's signs on Route 66 for hundreds of miles in either direction advertising the Merrimack Caverns. I was able to hop on a tour with only 2 other people, and my dad sat in the lobby as he didn't want to go in the cave. The tour was fantastic as it took you deep into the cave, had some really dark sections, and showed you where Jesse James hid out. As you got farther in, you got to see a lot of different water elements, which is very unique for any of the caves that I've ever been in.
Check this out, it's called a jungle.
There are also some fascinating formations in the cave, so if you like this type of thing, you definitely don't want to miss this stop. At the end of the tour, they even take you into a theater room where they project a patriotic movie onto one of the cave formations, something I never thought I would see on a cave tour.
Just finished the tour. That is so much fun. They have a theater where they play a movie on a formation, plus they have a bunch of crazy rooms. Definitely go to it. It's an awesome Route 66 experience.
After leaving the cave, we saw a few more old signs and motels before meeting up with some family and ending that day.
Morning day 12, we stayed about 30 minutes outside of St. Louis, and our first stop was at Route 66 State Park, where they have an old bridge that they're revitalizing, and then there's a park on the other side as well.
Since the old Route 66 bridge is no longer passable, you have to access both sides of the park from different exits on the freeway. We visited both, but the west side is mainly just trails and a park, and the east side features the museum. The Museum and Visitor Center is located in what used to be the Bridgehead Inn on Route 66. There are a lot of great exhibits in here with some cool neon signs, and I would recommend stopping at least for a few minutes to see this one.
Now we're heading into the city of St. Louis. We're going to see a few stops along the way and see the arch. This is Ted Drew's. It's supposed to be a great place for frozen custard that people line up for even before it's open. Fortunately, it's not open for us, but if you drive 66, check it out and let me know if it's good in the comments.
I got a chance to visit Ted Drew's a few months later with Amy, and it's a great spot for ice cream. Definitely don't miss it if it's open while you're going through the city. From there, we navigated our way to downtown St. Louis, looked forever for a place to park, and then walked over to the arch.
We made it to the St. Louis Arch. We're not actually going to go up or see much of the city today, but we wanted to at least see the arch before heading on.
I knew I was going to be back in St. Louis a month later, so I didn't explore much with my dad, but I have another video on my 21 favorite spots in the city that you can see in the description. I did want to specifically mention that if you don't want to go to downtown St. Louis, you can take an earlier alignment and you can go to the Chain of the Rocks Bridge as well. The bridge was built in 1929 and was an integral part of Route 66. It's unique because it has a 22-degree bend right in the middle. I wouldn't recommend trying to see the bridge and downtown St. Louis unless you set a half day aside for this part of the adventure though. After leaving St. Louis, we crossed over the Mississippi River, which is the border between Missouri and Illinois.
State number 7, our final state on our Route 66 journey, Illinois.
Our first stop in Illinois was in the town of Collinsville.
15 minutes outside of St. Louis, don't forget to stop at the world's largest ketchup bottle.
The world's largest ketchup bottle is 170 feet tall and it was built in 1949. As far as I could tell, it's part of a construction company and no longer a ketchup bottling plant, but it's still a cool roadside attraction to see.
Next up, we're in the town of Livingston, Illinois, at the Pink Elephant Antique Mall.
My dad and I had no idea this place existed, but we saw all the big statues outside from the road, so we got off to check it out. When we arrived, we found an old school gymnasium that had been converted into an antique mall with thousands of different things to purchase on what looked like a consignment basis. We had a good time walking down each of the aisles, and we got to talk to the owner, who was really excited about being a part of Route 66. They also have a fun diner and candy shop here if you're looking to get a bite to eat. From there, we continued on to Henry's Rabbit Ranch in Staunton, Illinois. Henry's Rabbit Ranch takes its inspiration from a lot of other historic parts of Route 66, with some cars buried in the ground outside and a large jackrabbit that you can sit on.
We're at Henry's Rabbit Ranch, where you can play with actual rabbits and you can sit on another rabbit just like in Arizona.
Henry has a bunch of rabbits in his shop too, and we got a chance to talk with them and to interact with some of the rabbits, which were very friendly. Leaving there, we stayed on the 1930 to 1940 alignment of Route 66 and went to see another old service station. In the town of Mount Olive, Soulsby's service station was built in 1926 and it's on the National Register of Historic Places. The work the current owners are doing in preservation is amazing, and it's definitely one of the best service stations we saw on the entire route. Plus, they had a fun passport stamp for us here as well.
So we're in Litchfield, Illinois now. This is a great little corner for Route 66. They have the museum on one side, a historic building on the other side, and then Jubel's, which is a 1920s bakery.
We went to the Route 66 Information Center first, which was pretty small, but it had some nice exhibits to see and it was free to enter. One of the best exhibits was on Bob Waldmeyer, and we always enjoyed seeing his different art as we drove Route 66. We walked across the street to take a picture of the cafe, and then we went to Jubel's to get some bakery items to try.
Trying a donut from Jubel's. Sour cream.
Since 1922.
Does not disappoint.
Yeah. What's it get out of 10?
Very nice. I give an 8.
An 8.
We continued driving and then took a short detour to Pioneer Park, where the Sugar Creek Covered Bridge is located. As you know, if you watch this video series, I love old bridges, so I couldn't resist the opportunity to see a bridge from 1880. Plus, it's a pretty cool covered bridge at over 60 feet long.
This bridge is about 10 minutes off Route 66, but it's definitely worth the short excursion if you have time. We are in Springfield. That's our destination, end of the route. But tonight, we're going right here.
When we entered Springfield, one of the places I wanted to stop at the most was the Cozy Dog Drive-In. This restaurant has been on Route 66 since 1949 and is supposedly one of the originators of the hot dog on a stick, dipped in batter and deep fried, known as the corn dog.
So we're at Cozy Dogs in Springfield, which is the home of the corn dog. Cheers. Hot. Good corn dog.
Creator of the corn dog. Yummy.
After indulging in our corn dogs, we went and saw a Muffler Man and then made our way through the city of Springfield. Since I had never been to this town before, I did want to stop and see a few of the President Abraham Lincoln exhibits they have here. First up, we went to President Lincoln's home, which sits on a replica recreation of what the street would have looked like when he lived there. We were lucky enough to get there right when they were giving their last tour of the day, so we got to walk through the home and learn more about the history of the Lincolns in this area. Plus, they even have a desk that he used when he was at the White House there.
If you get a chance while you're in Springfield and you want to check out some Abraham Lincoln stuff, there's a ton of that here. This is the home that he had while he was in Springfield before he went to the White House, and there's a memorial library and his tomb as well.
On the way out of town, we also stopped to see the Lincoln Tomb State Historic Site, but unfortunately it had closed for the day, so we just got to see it from outside. From there, we went to Carpenter Park, which supposedly had some original Route 66 road in it, but we're not sure we saw it. Then we went over to the Mill, which was a sandwich shop in the 1930s and which is now being turned into a museum.
We left the town of Springfield and now we're in the town of Lincoln, which is famous for the world's largest covered wagon, which you can see behind me, with Lincoln sitting on top.
We tried to stop at everything that said world's largest while on the route, and this was no exception. You can also see the courthouse where he practiced law while in the city, and go to the site where he supposedly christened the town with watermelon juice. Back on Route 66, we headed on to Atlanta to see the famous hot dog muffler man. It was built in 1966 and it used to stand outside of Bunyan's hot dog restaurant before moving to this location in 2003.
We've reached our last stop, Atlanta, Illinois. This is the Muffler Man statue. We're heading on to Bloomington Normal, and that is the end of day 12. So this is technically day 13. We're actually not leaving the Bloomington area because my grandma lives here, and so we picked her up to experience a little bit of Route 66 in Bloomington Normal, Illinois with us.
We decided to make this a chill day so we could spend some time with my grandma, but you'll probably want to go through most of these spots relatively quickly if you're going on to Chicago. The first stop for us was to backtrack a little bit to Funk's Grove and try their famous maple syrup. They have a long history making maple syrup, which is spelled with an I here, and we took a few bottles home for ourselves. For lunch, we headed over to Luca Grill in Bloomington, Illinois, which has been here since 1936 selling Italian food with an original bar and tin ceiling still.
First experience getting a videoed review of her eating a chicken wing. What would you give that out of 10?
9.5.
Oh, wow, that's a good review right there.
After lunch, we visited a few more places in Bloomington Normal and then went over to a service station from 1930.
On the way out of Normal, be sure to stop at this 1930s gas station.
It's the only two-story gas station on Route 66.
The service station is beautiful to see from the outside and it has a small store inside as well. Before leaving Bloomington, my dad really wanted to stop at the Beer Nuts Company store, and so we went over there.
Yep.
To end the day, we headed out to Towanda, where they have an original stretch of Route 66 that you can walk on.
This is the end of day 13. We're in the town of Towanda where there's an original stretch of Route 66. It's only about 50 feet or so, but it's definitely something fun to check out, and that's the end of day 13. Day 14, our last day on Route 66, leaving Bloomington and heading to Chicago.
Leaving Bloomington, we passed through Lexington, which has another original portion of Route 66, on our way to Pontiac.
This is our first stop today, the city of Pontiac and the Pontiac Route 66 Museum, plus the city has a lot of great murals all around the downtown area.
We plan to spend a good amount of time in the city of Pontiac as it has one of the best Route 66 museums on the entire route. Plus, it also has one of Bob Waldmeier's last murals, and after he passed away, over 500 of his friends came and painted it, each leaving their handprint in the mural. After seeing the murals, we went in and explored the museum. They have Bob Waldmeier's VW bus in here as well, which served as the inspiration for Fillmore in the movie Cars. Of course, there are lots of other exhibits to see here as well, and the volunteers that were working there were really excited to talk about our Route 66 drive with us. After leaving the museum, go out back and see Bob Waldmeier's school bus that he created to be his home on the road. I was told that he built this in the late 80s and that he lived in it for over 15 years driving back and forth on Route 66. It's pretty amazing that they still have this on display to see and that they open it up for you to go inside on select days. While in Pontiac, there's also an auto museum across the town square if you're interested in seeing some historic cars.
We're north of Pontiac in the city of Odell, and here's another historic gas station from 1932.
My dad and I stopped at about every restored service station we saw, but you might not want to stop at all of them if you have a time crunch. We found it really interesting to see what each one had and how they differed in their restoration. We headed on to the town of Dwight and stopped at another recreated gas station, which was probably one of our favorites in Illinois.
1914 fire truck. Look at that. You gonna ring the bell?
Where's my bell?
It's on the red, the red thing.
You've got your hand up.
This?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Woo!
Spinner like. That is so fun.
They also had a small store and a few other exhibits you could see in the gas station. You also don't want to miss the historic windmill while in the town of Dwight, which was built in the late 1800s. Heading on, we made it to the town of Braidwood, which has some mining history and an interesting exhibit called the Braidwood Zoo.
I didn't see this on any of the maps or anything, but when you enter into the town of Braidwood, go to this art installation, the Braidwood Zoo, which is all these little animals right here.
The Braidwood Zoo is an especially fun little roadside attraction. It was made by an artist who loved to work with scrap metal and created all of these unique animals and put them in this small cage. Basically across the street from the zoo was our next stop, the Polka Dot Drive-In, where we decided to have lunch. The Polka Dot Drive-In has been there since the 1960s and it still has that fun Route 66 diner vibe, complete with a jukebox and well-priced food.
It's a diner burger.
Very nice.
Yeah.
After lunch, we continued on past a Sinclair dinosaur to one of the spots I was most excited to see.
Our next stop, Gemini Giant.
The story goes that the original owners bought a Muffler Man in the 1960s and had it designed to look like an astronaut. They sat it next to their restaurant, which they called the Launching Pad, and it became an iconic landmark on Route 66. The restaurant was sold and closed for a little while, but the new owners have opened it back up again and made it a fun spot to stop for a meal with a little store as well. I enjoyed this spot so much I picked up a Gemini Giant bobblehead for my desk. We continued on to the town of Joliet, where they had an old historic theater and a museum that had a small Route 66 exhibit and a stamp for our passport.
Last stamp.
Da, 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 da.
The coolest thing they had in the museum was a map with a lot of the landmarks, and we looked over it to see all that we had accomplished on our Route 66 drive. Heading out of Joliet, we had a few more stops, including Dick's on 66.
You're now standing on original Route 66 roadway. Heck yes.
Across from Dick's is a popular ice cream place, so we knew we had to stop and try that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. You're welcome.
What you got?
Yeah, chocolate dip. Chocolate's very good.
Chocolate dip cone?
Yeah.
We're on the highway about 30 miles outside of Chicago. There's only one more stretch of Route 66 left before we're done.
But in Chicago, you gotta get a Chicago hot dog.
Henry's has an awesome neon sign and is supposedly a Route 66 original, so we had to stop in for a hot dog. We split a hot dog so we could save room for deep dish later and then continued on towards Chicago. We prepaid for parking at the Millennium parking lot, which is really expensive, but it's close to the Bean and the end of Route 66 sign.
Made it to Chicago, first stop the Bean.
The official name for this art installation is Clouds Gate, and it's one of the most popular photo spots in Chicago. Many people refer to it as the Bean though because of its shape. From there, we started walking a few blocks through downtown to get to the end of Route 66 sign.
If you're doing Route 66 heading west, this is where you're gonna start on Adams in Michigan, but we're one block over at the end sign. We're walking to the end of Route 66 sign, but we're trying to take our time because we don't want this epic trip to be over. 66. That's it, we made it to the end of Route 66, 2,400 miles and 14 days, and one of the most epic road trips ever.
Thanks so much for coming with us on this journey. Get more information at throughmylens.com.
See you guys on the next road trip.
Thanks so much for going on this journey with my dad and I hope you enjoyed this series as much as we enjoyed making it. Also, if you have questions about Route 66, be sure to leave them in the comments and we'll see if we can answer them in a future video. Again, we really appreciate all of you watching these videos and leaving us positive comments over the last few weeks. It's been so fun to go on this journey with you, and I hope it encourages you to see Route 66 in the future as well. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next video.